Here is something nobody tells you about investing in your child's dream. The moment you agree to write the check, you stop being their father. You become the bank. And apparently, banks do not get invited to soft openings. My name is Arthur Pembroke. I am 64 years old. I live in Bristol, England, and I spent 34 years in commercial property before I retired. I have dealt with smiling thieves in tailored suits. I have watched men lie across polished tables while asking if I preferred tea or coffee. I have seen signatures forged, accounts hidden, partnerships poisoned, and families split over square footage. I thought I understood deception. Then my daughter-in-law taught me I had been underestimating it. Her name was Vanessa. She was 5'7", always dressed like she was arriving from somewhere important, and she had the kind of soft voice people mistake for kindness. She called me Arthur in public and Dad when she wanted something. That should have told me enough. But love makes you generous. And sometimes generosity is the door a thief walks through. It began with my son Elliot. Elliot was 35, clever, earnest, and far too willing to believe people were better than they were. He had worked in hospitality management for years, moving from restaurant groups to hotel bars to supplier contracts. He knew people. He knew beer. He knew how to stand in a room and make strangers feel like old friends. What he wanted was a brewery, not some reckless fantasy, a proper business, small batch ales, a tap room near the harbor, local distribution, food trucks on weekends, events, tastings, the whole Bristol craft scene, but with discipline behind it. He came to me on a wet Sunday in April with a folder under one arm and Vanessa beside him. My wife, Judith, was making coffee. Elliot spread the documents across our kitchen table like he was presenting to investors in London. There were projections, licensing plans, lease options, supplier agreements, branding mock-ups. The logo said, Pembroke Yard Brewing. I will admit something shifted inside me when I saw that. My name, my son's dream, something that might outlive both of us. Elliot leaned forward and said, Dad, I've worked on this for almost 2 years. This isn't a hobby. This is real. I picked up the financial forecast. Who prepared these numbers? Elliot looked proud. Vanessa helped. She's brilliant with finance. Judith made a small sound behind me. Not a word. A sound. The kind a wife makes when she is trying to remain polite while every instinct in her body is standing up. I had been married to Judith for 40 years. I understood the language. I turned another page. How much? Elliot swallowed. 390,000 pounds. The room went quiet. Vanessa did not look at Elliot. She looked at me. That mattered. I said, I'll think about it. Elliot nodded quickly. Vanessa smiled. A beautiful smile, measured, patient, already spending the money. What I did not tell either of them was that Judith had warned me 3 weeks earlier. We had been at Elliot and Vanessa's flat for dinner. Vanessa had cooked sea bass, which she served like a closing argument. Candles on the table, wine already opened. Elliot was nervous and happy in that open way of his. Halfway through the meal, he stepped out to take a call from the landlord of a potential site. Vanessa waited until he was gone. Then she looked across the table and said, Arthur, Elliot talks about you constantly. I said, Does he? All the time. He wants to make you proud. I said nothing. She folded her hands beside her glass. This brewery could change everything for him. For both of us. For the family. The family, I said. She held my gaze just a little too long. You won't regret backing him. On the drive home, Judith was silent for almost 15 minutes. Then she said, She already knows the number. I glanced over. What number? The amount she intends to ask you for. Elliot hasn't asked yet. No, Judith said. But she has. I kept my eyes on the road. Judith looked out at the rain on the windscreen. She was watching you, Arthur. Not him. You. That stayed with me. I called Malcolm Price the next morning. Malcolm and I had known each other since university. He became a forensic accountant because normal accountancy, in his words, lacked suspense. He was dry, cynical, and irritatingly good at finding rot under clean paint. He answered with, "Please don't tell me this involves one of your old warehouse clients." "It involves my son." He went quiet. That was rare. I told him about the brewery, the projections, Vanessa, Judith's concern, the number. When I finished, Malcolm said, "You want me to look at the business plan?" "I want you to look at everything." Everything is an expensive word. "I know what it costs." He sighed. "Send me what you have." I did. Then I played my part. A week later, I phoned Elliot and told him I was willing to invest. He went silent. Not calculating silence. Grateful silence. The kind that hurts when you remember it later. "Dad," he said, "are you serious?" "I believe in you." His voice cracked slightly. "I won't let you down." I looked out at the garden where Judith was trimming roses. "I know you won't." What I did not say was that he was not the one I was worried about. Judith came into the study after I hung up. "You haven't transferred anything?" "Of course not." "Good." She kissed the top of my head and left. That woman could read a room before most people had found the door. Malcolm called 12 days later. I knew from the way he said my name that he had found something. "Arthur." I put down my pen. "What?" "You should sit down." "I am sitting down." "Sit more seriously." I leaned back. "Talk." "The business plan your daughter-in-law gave Elliot is excellent, professional, sensible assumptions. Conservative growth curve. Nothing wild. But it has very little to do with the actual company structure filed at Companies House." I said nothing. Malcolm continued. "The brewery company exists. Lease negotiations are real. Licensing applications are underway. Equipment quotes are genuine. But the operating accounts are not aligned with the investment proposal." "Explain." "There is a secondary service agreement routing initial operational expenses through a consultancy." "Whose consultancy?" He paused. "A man named Felix Drayton." I wrote the name down. "Who is he?" "Listed as a business development consultant. But that's not the interesting part." "It rarely is with you." "He shares a registered address with Vanessa's cousin. He is also tied to 2 dissolved companies in Cardiff and Bath. Both received investor funds. Both collapsed within 18 months. Both left behind creditors and very little traceable equipment." My office became very still. "How long has this been in motion?" "Before Elliot came to your kitchen." I closed my eyes. I saw Vanessa at the dinner table. Candles, sea bass, that soft voice. "You won't regret backing him." I said, "Could Elliot know?" Malcolm's answer came carefully. "I don't think so. The documents he showed you look like documents prepared for him, not by him." That was the first mercy. Not the last, but the first. After I ended the call, I sat alone for a long time. Then I phoned Theo Bramwell. Theo was my solicitor. He spoke so slowly that impatient men confessed just to speed him up. He answered, "Arthur, how pleasant. I need an escrow arrangement." A pause. "Family or business?" "Both." Another pause. Then unpleasant. "I need it quiet. I'll prepare the paperwork." The money went nowhere near Vanessa. Every pound was placed in escrow, controlled by conditions Vanessa did not know existed. Verification of company structure, matched banking records, independent review of vendor agreements, confirmation that no affiliated third party would receive funds without disclosure, standard protections. At least standard if you have spent your life watching respectable people hide knives in paperwork. The brewery opened 11 months later. Not officially. A soft opening. Invited guests, local suppliers, friends, influencers. Apparently everyone except the man whose money was supposed to make it possible. Judith found out first. She came into my study on a Thursday afternoon holding her phone. Vanessa called. I looked up from my book. And? The brewery opened last week. I lowered the book. Last week? 8 days ago. I let the number settle. 8 days. No call, no photograph, no message from Elliot saying, "Dad, come see what we built." Nothing. What did Vanessa say? Judith sat across from me, calm in the way she becomes when anger has turned cold. She said it was only for close friends and key supporters. I stared at her. Key supporters? Yes. I am supposed to be investing £390,000. Judith nodded. Perhaps not key enough. I smiled. She narrowed her eyes. Do not smile like that unless you intend to explain it. I'm smiling because she called. She called to insult us. No, I said. She called to measure the distance between my pride and my check. Judith leaned back. And? The check is still behind glass. She watched me for a long moment. Theo? And Malcolm. She nodded. Good. 3 days later, Vanessa phoned me. I let it ring twice, not 3. 3 looks petty. 2 looks like a man who might be busy. Vanessa, I said warmly. What a lovely surprise. Arthur, hello. I hope I'm not catching you at a bad time. Not at all. How are you and Judith? Very well. Quiet week. She laughed softly. She had several laughs. That one meant she wanted something but did not want to arrive carrying the request in both hands. That sounds lovely. Listen, I won't keep you. Take your time. A pause. So we're getting fully operational now. It's exciting but intense. Vendors, licensing balances, equipment, staffing. You know how new businesses are. I do. And we were just checking on the investment transfer. We expected it to have cleared by now. There it was. Not concern, not gratitude. Urgency in a silk dress. I said nothing. She filled the silence. Arthur, I'm here. Did the transfer go through? Yes, I said. It was handled weeks ago. The silence after that was perfect. If Vanessa had been innocent, she would have exhaled. She would have said, wonderful, I'll check with the bank. Instead, she said, handled how? I looked at the garden. Judith was outside again, standing by the roses like she knew exactly what conversation was happening inside. Through the proper account, I said. Which account? The one established for the investment. Another pause, sharper this time. I'm sorry, Arthur. I'm not seeing anything on our side. Theo Bramwell has the details. Who? I smiled. Theo, my solicitor. Her voice changed, only slightly. But I heard it. People reveal themselves in fractions. I didn't realize a solicitor was involved. With an investment of this size, I would have been negligent not to involve one. Yes, of course. He'll be expecting your call. I'll reach out. Please do. We ended politely. Families are very good at disguising war as courtesy. Theo called 70 minutes later. She phoned, he said. I assumed she would. She asked where the money was. And? I told her the funds were held in escrow pending verification of the company's operational structure. How did she take that? She asked what verification meant. I leaned back. What did you say? I explained it slowly. With relish? With professionalism. That meant relish. She then asked how long the process would take. I said that depended entirely on whether the documents matched the investment agreement. And? She ended the call. I could hear paper shifting on his desk. Arthur, there is something else. Tell me. Felix Drayton is connected to 2 prior investor complaints. Neither reached prosecution. Both were settled quietly. But there is a pattern. Vanessa? Her name does not appear directly, but her email address appears in one archived vendor chain from Bath. I closed my eyes. There it was. The thing I had hoped not to find. Not a mistake. A pattern. That evening, Judith and I sat in the kitchen without turning on the television. She said, "When do we tell Elliot?" "Soon. He will be broken." "I know. He loves her." "I know that too." Judith looked toward the back window. The rain had started again, moving down the glass in thin lines. "Then you need to be his father first," she said, "not his banker." The next morning I called Elliot. He answered with noise behind him. Metal. Voices, the hum of a space coming alive. "Dad, hey, you should come by soon. The new tap line is finally behaving." "Elliot, I need you at the house." Something in my voice reached him. "Is Mom all right?" "She's fine." "What's happened?" "Come alone." The noise behind him faded. "What does that mean?" "It means don't tell Vanessa you're coming." There are sentences that divide a life into before and after. That was one of them. He arrived 35 minutes later. He looked pale before he even sat down. Judith hugged him first, longer than usual. He let her. That told me he already knew the conversation would hurt. We sat at the same kitchen table where he had shown me the brewery plan almost a year earlier. I placed Malcolm's folder between us. Clean, numbered, unemotional. The way truth should be when it is about to destroy someone. "Before I released the investment," I said, "I had the structure reviewed." Elliot looked at the folder. "You audited me?" "I protected you." His jaw tightened. "What did you find?" I did not soften it. Soft lies are still lies. I showed him the filed company records, the consultancy agreement, the secondary account, the connection to Felix Drayton, the prior collapsed businesses, the vendor contracts that did not match the projections, the planned routing of funds away from the brewery and into an outside entity. I spoke carefully. No drama. No accusations beyond what the documents could support. Elliot stared at each page as though the paper itself had betrayed him. At the end, he said, "Vanessa prepared the filings." "Yes. I signed what she told me to sign." "I know." He looked at me then. His face had changed. Not aged exactly. Emptied. "The money?" "In escrow." "All of it?" "Every pound." He let out a breath that almost became a sob. Then he covered his mouth with one hand. "She told me it had cleared." "I know." "She showed me a confirmation." Malcolm believes it was fabricated. Elliot stood and walked to the window. Outside, Judith's rose bushes bent under the rain. He stood there for a long time. Then he said, "Was any of it real?" That was the question that hurt, because the answer was not clean. "The brewery is real," I said. "The lease is real. The equipment is real. The product is real. You are real." He did not turn around. "And my marriage?" I had no answer that would not wound him, so I gave him the truth. "I don't know." His shoulders moved once. Judith came to him then. She put a hand between his shoulder blades and said nothing. There are moments when words only make grief perform. We gave him silence. After a while, he sat down again. "What happens now?" "Now," I said, "we stop her from reaching anything else." The next 13 days were quiet from the outside. That is how most serious things happen. Not with shouting, with emails, notices, filed reports. Meetings in offices where no one raises their voice because the facts are already loud enough. Theo issued formal requests for documentation. Malcolm prepared a full report. Elliot removed Vanessa's administrative access to the brewery accounts. That part broke him. I watched him do it at my kitchen table with his laptop open and his hands shaking. He kept saying, "She knows the passwords." I said, "Then we change the locks before we discuss the door." Felix Drayton became the center of something larger than our family. 2 other investors came forward after Theo's notice made its way through the proper channels. One in Cardiff, one near Bath. Both had seen versions of the same structure. Both had lost money. Both had been told failure was just business. It was not just business. It rarely is. Vanessa called Elliot 32 times in one day. He did not answer. Then she came to our house. Judith saw her through the front window and said, "I'll make tea." That meant there would be no tea. Vanessa stood on the porch in a beige coat, rain in her hair, face composed but not quite enough. "Arthur," she said, "I need to speak with Elliot. He isn't here." That was true. He was at Theo's office. "I know you've turned him against me." "No," I said. "Documents did that." Her eyes hardened, only for a second. Then the wounded wife returned. "You have no idea what you're doing. This will destroy him." "You should have considered that before using his name." "I built that company with him." "You built a way out of it." Her face went still. That was the first honest expression I had ever seen from her. "You think you're very clever." "No," I said. "I think I was almost careless." She looked past me into the hall, as if Elliot might appear and rescue the version of herself she had sold him. "He won't survive this without me," she said. I stepped closer. "My son survived being lied to by the person he trusted most. Do not confuse your absence with danger." For a moment, I thought she might say something real. She did not. People like Vanessa usually mistake exposure for injury. She left without another word. Felix Drayton was arrested 3 weeks later on matters that extended beyond us. Vanessa was not taken away in handcuffs. Life is not as theatrical as people want it to be, but she retained a solicitor. That told me enough. Elliot filed for divorce in June. It was a hard summer. There is no revenge that does not leave ash somewhere. He came to dinner every Thursday. Some nights he talked about suppliers and licensing and beer. Some nights he sat at the table like a man waiting for pain to become weather. Judith cooked for him. I poured wine. No one asked him to be strong. Strength is overrated during grief. Showing up is enough. The brewery nearly collapsed twice. Not because it was weak, because betrayal is expensive. Theo rebuilt the company structure. Malcolm reviewed every invoice. Elliot renegotiated vendor terms face to face, which is harder than people think when your shame has been made administrative. But the business had good bones. The site near the harbor was excellent. The beer was better than I expected. And Elliot, once he stopped mistaking trust for management, became formidable. By October, Pembroke Yard Brewing opened properly. Not a soft opening, a real one. This time I received an invitation. Heavy card, plain lettering, no gold foil, no nonsense. Judith found it on the hall table and smiled. "Are we key supporters now?" "Apparently." The opening was on a clear Friday evening, the kind Bristol sometimes offers as an apology for weeks of rain. The brewery sat in a converted warehouse with old brick walls, black steel beams, and high windows catching the last of the light. The sign above the door read, "Pembroke Yard." Brewing Elliot was outside waiting for us. He looked thinner than he had the year before, but steadier. That mattered more. He hugged Judith first, then me. "Thank you for coming," he said. I looked at the sign. "You invited me this time." A faint smile crossed his face. "I thought it might be wise." Inside, the place smelled of malt, timber, citrus hops, and new paint. People stood at long tables. Staff moved behind the bar. Local musicians played quietly in the corner. Nothing flashy, nothing false. Elliot gave us a tour. He showed me the tanks, the tap system, the cold room, the small office where, he said, no one could approve a payment alone anymore. "Good," I said. He laughed softly. "I thought you'd like that part." "I like several parts. That one especially." At the bar, he poured 2 half-pints from the first official batch. Judith declined hers and said she preferred to watch men get sentimental over foam. Elliot raised his glass. "To the brewery," he said. I looked around, at the brick walls, at my son. at the name above the door, at everything that had almost been stolen because love had nearly made me careless. Then I raised my glass. To paying attention. We drank. The beer was good. Not perfect. Good. There is honesty in something that still has room to improve. Later, while Judith spoke with a woman from the local paper, Elliot and I stood near the front window. Outside, Bristol moved in its usual evening rhythm. Taxis, students, rain threatening but not yet falling. Elliot said, "Do you ever wish you had confronted her at the beginning?" No. Why? Because confrontation would have warned her. Patience exposed her. He nodded. I keep thinking about the day I brought you the plan. So do I. I thought you were proud of me. I was. He looked at me. And suspicious. Yes. That must have been hard. It was. He looked down at his glass. I'm sorry I didn't see it. I turned toward him. You were in love. That is not a crime. It feels like stupidity. Only because it hurt. He was quiet for a while. Then he said, Was it revenge? I thought about Vanessa on my porch, Felix Drayton, the escrow account, Malcolm's dry voice, Theo's slow one, Judith making that small sound at our kitchen counter. No, I said. Revenge would have been about making her suffer. This was about making sure she failed. Elliot absorbed that. Then he nodded once. Outside, the first rain began to touch the glass. Not hard, just enough to remind everyone in Bristol not to trust a clear sky for too long. I watched my son return to the bar, where customers were waiting. He smiled at them. Not the old smile, open and unguarded. A different one, warmer than mine, but wiser than before. That was the cost. That was also the gift. People like Vanessa count on love being blind. They forget love can also learn to read. And if there is one thing I would tell any father, any mother, any person tempted to sign away caution because family is standing in front of them with hope in their eyes, it is this. Help them. Believe in them. Back them if you can. But read the paperwork. Because sometimes the person standing beside your child is not sharing the dream. Sometimes they are waiting for you to fund the escape. And sometimes the kindest thing you can do for your child is not to trust blindly. It is to pay attention before the damage becomes inheritance.